Once upon a time, in a faraway forest full of all sorts of animals that creeped and crawled and flew, was a bunny. A sweet little bunny, a brown little bunny with one ear that stood straight up and another that curled over his left eye when he thought really hard from years and years of hard bunny work. Benny loved being a bunny. He loved hopping as high as he could. He loved twitching his little nose at the smell of his favorite vegetables. And Benny loved interacting with the rest of his forest animals. But one thing that Benny loved more than anything was his mate, Margot. Margot was a sweet little white bunny with a cute little cotton tail that wiggled when she talked to him. They loved being together, and Margot loved learning and being with Benny. But it was perhaps Benny who learned more than Margot, because it was through her that he began to see with new eyes this deep faith that she had in the great elk. A deep faith that Benny didn't always understand, but that he loved listening to her speak about, because when she spoke of the great elk, her eyes lit up and her nose twitched, and it seemed as if she could hardly keep her paws on the ground because she nearly hopped with excitement when she talked of the great elk's deep love for her and the rest of the forest. But Benny often wondered where that love was, because as much as Benny loved being a bunny, it was hard, hard work. Benny remembered a time when it was easy, when he and the rest of the bunnies could hop freely and sniff freely and live freely. But ever since the Panther King came to the forest and took things over, life wasn't quite so easy. Instead, Benny's back ached with the weight of jumping up and down for days at a time, making cement to build the Panther's palace. And his nose was scabbed and bruised from pushing the logs toward the palace to add with the cement. He and other bunnies worked day in and day out for a palace that they were never sure that they would see. Where was this great elk? Where was this great love? Where was this great promise that Margot spoke of? It became more and more difficult to be a bunny as Margot and Benny had their family of babies. 7 little spotted bunnies who loved to sing and play. They didn't yet quite understand the hardships of life because Benny worked really, really hard to be sure that they were well fed. But it got more and more difficult as time went on because his back ached so much it was hard to work in their garden. And his nose was so sore that he could hardly even smell the food that he was preparing for his family. It was hard work. But yet Margot still gathered her little bunnies around her, and she told them stories of the great elk, of his love for their people, for their bunny people, of his promise for a land with carrots taller than an antelope, with cabbages wider than a porcupine, with water so clear that you could see it from many, many, many hops away. It sounded really good, but so far-fetched. How could Benny believe in this land with vegetables that made his mouth water just to think of the taste, when life was so, so hard? It was so hard, in fact, that Benny at one point traded almost everything he had for one seed. One seed to plant in his garden that he tended to like it would save the world. He sang to this plant. He picked up all of the weeds around this plant. He prayed over the plant to whatever great elk there might be, and he waited for his one carrot to grow. One carrot that he hoped would feed his family for days, maybe even feed the neighbors too. That's how big this carrot was going to be. But he was getting a little worried as time got on and the carrot continued to grow, because there were these two bunnies that hopped around stirring up all sorts of trouble with the Panther King. These two bunnies would get together and they would go to the Panther King and they would tell them that the bunnies wanted to be let go. And the Panther King refused. Benny was tired of his feet getting stuck in the carcasses of locusts as he jumped to work. He was getting tired of being unable to drink the water because it was so thick with blood. He was tired of the boils on his children's body. He was tired of being surrounded by all of these things that made his life so hard. He wished that those two bunnies would just go away. The work was hard, but the pain was harder. Just go away. So Benny and Margot and their family hid out in their little burrow for days at a time, only leaving when they had to because it was safer. If you hopped too high, you might be questioned for being in cahoots with those two crazy bunnies. If you sniffed from too far away, or even worse, got too close, you might get in trouble with the Panther King. And so Benny and Margot and his family stayed in the burrow. Yet Margot told stories of faith, stories of this promised land. And no matter how much Benny wanted to ignore, his mouth salivated with the thought of those carrots taller than antelopes and the cabbages wider than porcupines and the water so clear you can see it from many, many, many hops away. One day as they were sitting in their burrow and Margot and the kids were singing, there came a loud knock on the door. Benny, Margot, come quickly! And so Benny and Margot held each other close and hopped to the entrance of their burrow, where Alfred was standing there, screaming nonsense about something still to come. Benny, Margot, you have to listen. Those two crazy rabbits are at it again, but they have said that something even worse is coming. I have to warn you. It's coming fast. And Benny and Margot just stared. What are you talking about? Are you crazy? What is this that you speak of? Could it get any worse? And Alfred looked at them and he said, there's something coming. You must prepare. Because if you don't prepare for this, your firstborn bunny will not wake in the morning. And Benny turned white. But Margot stared at him with a confidence that Benny did not quite understand and simply said, what must we do? Alfred spoke quickly. Go get your best carrot for your families and slice it into teeny tiny pieces as a sacrifice. Take all of those pieces of that carrot, put them in a basin, and touch the entrance of your home with the carrots in that basin. For the great elk will pass through and strike down the panthers of the forest when he sees the carrots on your home. The Lord will pass over that door and will not allow the destroyer to enter your houses or strike you down. You will observe this rite as a perpetual ordinance for you and your children. When you come to the land that the Lord will give you, as he has promised, you will keep this observance. And when your children ask you, what do you mean by this? You will say, it is the Passover carrot, a sacrifice to the great elk, for he passed over the houses of the bunnies of the forest when he struck down the panthers, but spared our homes. Benny stood there shocked as Margot turned confidently on her toes and hopped to the garden. And Benny stared in horror as she went right to the carrot, the one carrot, and pulled it up from the ground. And Benny just stared. But instead of getting angry, he slumped to the ground, defeated. Why my carrot? Why this carrot? Why not the other cabbages? Why not the nuts from the squirrels? Why not anything else? I would hop for days before giving up my carrot. Please, no. This was meant to feed my family. Why would we waste this carrot for something that we don't even know is going to happen? How can you be so sure? And Margot, in all her wisdom, came, and she sat down next to Benny. Benny, I know that this is your carrot. I know that you wanted this carrot to feed our family and our neighbors for days. But I believe in a great elk who promised us that this carrot is not the end. That there will be a promised land when there will be many carrots this size and bigger, and cabbages bigger than a porcupine in water so clear you can see your reflection in it from many, many, many hops away. It's just a carrot. And as children sometimes are wont to do, they sensed what was going on and they gathered around Benny and Margot. And they sat there together as Margot told them stories of a great elk full of love and compassion that promised them a future in a garden, a promised land with carrots taller than an antelope, and cabbages wider than a porcupine, and water so clear you can see your reflection in it from many, many hops back. And they began to sing, "I'll fly away. I'll fly away when I die, hallelujah, by and by. I will fly away." And Benny looked at his children, his oldest son, and perhaps for the first time he began to believe. Maybe it is just a carrot, the best carrot that I have, but I have gifts far greater than that around me now. And so Benny went to his carrot, and he chopped it into tiny pieces, and he put it in a basin, and he rubbed it over the outside of his burrow. And he thought to himself, it's good to be a bunny. I can't wait to hop as high as I can and sniff as far as I can and drink as much water as I can and be surrounded by my loved ones and my family. That night, as Margot and her children began to sleep, you could hear soft little snores coming from the entrance of their home. Benny went outside to grieve a little bit at the hole where his carrot once was, and was shocked to find one sprout coming up from the ground where that carrot once was. And he thought, perhaps it was just a carrot, the best carrot that I had. But more than that, I have been shown God's faithfulness, and my family will be fed for now until the end of time. Thanks be to God.